Well, a very good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Adrian Reed, and it is my pleasure, my absolute pleasure, to welcome you to today's webinar, where we're going to be talking about a topic that is, I'm sure, close to many of our hearts, which is elicitation. And elicitation is one of those topics that's so core to what we do as business analysts that it's really easy to forget about it or for it to become second nature. So I'm really, really pleased to say we've got an expert with us today who'll be helping us to build on our thinking, maybe even challenging our thinking in some places around such an important topic as elicitation. So I'd like to welcome you to Jamie Champagne. I'm sure many of you will be familiar with Jamie's work already. I met Jamie, I can't remember how many years ago, like 5 or something, Jamie, at the Building Business Capability Conference. And I mean, what I would say about Jamie is one of the most passionate business analysts I think I have ever met. She has been instrumental in setting up, growing the Hawaii chapter of IIBA, is immediate past president there, been involved in so many things in the community and collaboration, and of course founder of Champagne Collaborations as well. So I'm really, really pleased that Jamie could join us this evening. So with a presentation entitled Innovative Elicitation, let's take a fresh perspective on an old technique. Over to you, Jamie.
Oh, thank you so much, Adrian. Love the energy, and hopefully I can continue it as we move forward here, because some people, it's kind of interesting. I say I love talking about elicitation. Like I bring this up here because I talked with a group of project managers, and I thought it was kind of funny because they go, ooh, elicitation, a 4-syllable word. We don't use 4-syllable words around here. That this technique, they said, well, elicitation, it's, like, why talk about it? Like, what is this? I'm going to turn it over real quick just to get some thoughts here that elicitation has been on the map for forever. That if I pause here and say, Adrian, what do you think of elicitation? Like, why would you want to talk about this right now? What makes it so exciting today?
Well, I mean, one thing I find, Jamie, I'm not sure if you find the same, is that it's something that it's like it's almost become a tacit skill for us as BAs. So, and what I mean by that is you get into a bit of a, or I find I get into a bit of a groove. So I'm like, okay, well, elicitation, interviews, workshops, right? And I'm not saying interviews and workshops aren't great, but there are so many other techniques out there that we could be using, and it's really easy to get stale. So I think what's really interests me is reminding myself of all the other ideas that there are out there that we can rely on depending on the context.
I'm such a big fan of elicitation, to your point that it's a technique that's been around, and so it works. We know it works, it's great, so we put it in the toolbox and we move forward. What happens though when it doesn't work? What do you do? Like you say, you know what it is, but there's so many more elements to it. Did I try those elements? Did I understand I could do different approaches? Interviews is just one way to have a conversation. But like say, let's stop though for a second. I actually want to share a little bit here because I thought it was fun when someone asked me about elicitation. Let's look at what elicitation means. Here's for our IIBA members. I love this. This is the Babcock definition of elicitation. I pulled it up, read it, and said, okay, an iterative derivation and extraction of information from stakeholders or other info. I don't know about you, but to me that sounds like a painful root canal or something going on here.
Yeah, for sure.
I was like, this is hard to swallow. And I actually, PMI, the project management side, even when I looked at what they said, there's always the collect requirements, that like they weren't talking about elicitation. And so when I wanted to set the stage for elicitation, I talk a little bit more about drawing forth or receiving information from stakeholders or other sources. So when we want to say we want to get creative and really talk about what elicitation is and why it's so valuable today, is it's pulling out that understanding, but you're also receiving information. That look at our smartphones, our technology, we have it constantly around us. We are bombarded with information. That's still elicitation. You go into an environment and you get this information. That, do we think about it from that manner? Because then if we start changing our perception, that elicitation goes from, I come to you and please give me a response, to I can get information in so many more other ways. Now I have this technique that is malleable to whatever situation happens. I have something in my toolbox I can really, really use.
That's really interesting, Jamie, because just as you were talking there, I was thinking about a term that probably you and I have heard and have even used in the past, which is requirements gathering. And it's interesting because we could look at it and say, oh, well, requirements elicitation, that's just requirements gathering by another word. But to me, the difference is quite significant, because requirements gathering implies something quite passive, like the requirements are out there for us to collect, whereas elicitation to me feels more active. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree. With the elicitation, when we talk about it, is you're engaging, that's that engagement. And even though we might have some definition, I'll switch back here now to, like you say, drawing forth or receiving information from stakeholders or other sources. You can engage with content. You can engage with an environment. That it's about that interactions that come forth and that kind of bubble up this great information. So this is good. I want to lead forth to some concepts and things when we think about elicitation. Let's restructure here a little bit so we get on the right foot. We'll draw forth kind of basic thought behind elicitation. You want to pull out some information. You want to get it to the surface. The conversation part where, hi, Adrian, how are you doing today? And you go, I'm fine. Okay. All right, you're fine. What does fine mean? I want to kind of get a little bit more understanding there, that draw it out. That's like simple. We do our conversations, 5 whys, all these techniques we have, to break things down and kind of pull out what's the root cause, what's the true foundation to draw it forth to the surface with elicitation. But when we do that, again, we have to be in that manner of receiving. We're not just pushing out our questions or we're searching our documents. We want to make sure we're open to receiving input. I think we joked, here we are on a webinar, and when I can't see your face, we're polite, we smile and nod, and we hope things are working well. If I pause here and I come back to the conversation that I can see you, we can share. Am I excited? Am I engaged? Are you smile and nod at understanding my items, but then when I ask you, do you feel like you're receiving message? What do you think about that? How do you respond, Adrian?
Yeah, it's a really interesting aspect, actually, Jamie, because what I'm also thinking there, and as whenever we talk, Jamie, I've just got so many ideas buzzing around my head, so probably a slight tangent here, but I'm also thinking about how actually there are cultural elements to this as well, because I'm aware that you're from Hawaii, I'm from the UK. I know in past conversations we've discussed different cultures many times, but actually for example, a typical sort of British thing is if someone says, oh, that's interesting, they might not always actually mean that's interesting. They might mean let's move on. So actually there's a whole sort of cultural thing going on in the background as well. And to your point about receiving, there's something about us receiving the communication that was intended. So it's so easy to hear without actually hearing.
Absolutely. I mean, think about our business analysts, the verify and validate. I captured what you said, but did I validate that that's what you meant? We get into customer expectations all the time.
Have you any tips, Jamie, for doing that? I mean, would you recommend paraphrasing and playing it back to people in other words, or how would do you do it sort of iteratively as you go along, or what's your normal approach?
I'm a big fan whenever you're doing kind of any elicitation, you have the standard planning, you explain the purpose. Adrian, I'm going to ask you some questions for this goal of accomplishing XYZ. What I do, where I'm big on elicitation, whether it's observation, it's document analysis, it's interviews, workshops, is I try as quickly as possible to give you back a copy or share with you what I've just captured.
Yeah.
because then sometimes, think about how you can have this conversation with me, and then at lunchtime, how many more things are you going to think about? Oh, I wish I had told Jamie that.
Yeah.
Oh, I just seen that cool billboard ad. It gave me a great idea. We should include that. So much more comes back, and you yourself are hit with all this stimulation. Your stakeholder requirements, they change the moment your stakeholder leaves your conversation. So if you say, here's what I have, and I'm going to run forward with this, even that simple verification, they go, okay, yeah, that's what I said. That's one way, to share right away, because you want to receive more feedback. The other part is, get into all the other techniques we could talk about, like acceptance criteria. Here's what you said, and so if I give you this, will this make you happy? Does this address the business need? Those good BA techniques, we could talk about for forever. But, here's a good point. This elicitation, I'm receiving information. It's normally not for me. It's not for Jamie to keep her job. I get information.
Mm-hmm.
It's normally to accomplish a goal. Where are we going with this information? What are we doing? So the more that I get information, I share it back out to everybody who needs to use this. A great way, get your stakeholder requirements, you listen to them all, hand them right over to the technical team. Don't do anything with them. See if they can go envision or design exactly what the stakeholders are picturing. Normally, that's why we have BAs. We have this great job capability, because we need to finesse and articulate them in a way that are usable to that particular audience.
Mm.
So, that's a great point. I'm going to chime in because I don't want to forget to make sure we highlight and emphasize, like, the key piece here is we're talking about understanding.
Yeah.
Who is using what you're getting? Do you understand where the people are coming from? Can others understand the work you have brought out of? That, to me, when we talk elicitation, the reason it's so powerful, it's relevant today, no matter how you do it, is because it's understanding.
Yeah, and actually, again, as you're speaking there, Jamie, I'm thinking actually understanding has different angles to it, because as business analysts, we've got to be sure that we understand the intent. And we have to do all the good things that we do as BAs, like make sure it's not a solution, because people come to us with solutions and that normal thing. But then we need to actually communicate it in a way that is, potentially, if we want to, technically agnostic or whatever, but in a way that's not so abstract that it makes no sense. So actually, we've got to make sure we understand. But then we have to also, when we get into the requirements definition, make sure it's written in a way which is understandable. So it's like two sides.
It's almost, I would almost say, like 3 slides, because you're understanding your stakeholder in that context at that time with their experience. You're trying to understand where it fits with what your job is tasked, where you're going with it. And then, to your point, absolutely, who's going to use your outputs? What are you doing with that? Is that understandable? So almost like 3 sides of it.
Yeah.
Talk about value of a business analyst now, right?
Yeah. Well, and this is where I get my geeky business analyst hat on, because, like, well, you and I probably remember in BA-Bot version 2, the knowledge area was called elicitation. In BA-Bot version 3, it's called elicitation and collaboration, which again sounds like we've just added a word there, but it's really important. It's about saying, well, look, it's not, you don't go out and elicit all the requirements and then they're done. It is iterative, and you're collaborating, and we might, draw a quick prototype or something and say, is this, to your point about acceptance criteria, is this what you meant, kind of thing. So that seems like an important distinction as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And good point. The BABOK, there's that 4th task in there, to communicate business analysis information. And I think we're like, we do that, move on. Like you say, it's not one of these sexy tasks in the BABOK. Your point, I just did all this hard work. I took all your time. Here I am having this great conversation with you. To me, I think the least I can do is show you what you've helped me create, show you what it's going to be used for. I've shown you now that value, and let's go back to understanding. Now, have you understood what we're doing and why we're doing it even better, and why you're important to that process?
Yeah, which again, reminds me of a point that actually stakeholder engagement and stakeholder planning and elicitation, they feel so closely coupled, so closely linked, because we need to identify stakeholders to do elicitation. Like, to do elicitation well, we need to know who the stakeholders are. But as soon as you start eliciting, you discover new stakeholders and more about your stakeholders. So the two are like two gears running each other, getting the project up to speed.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, are you engaged in what you're doing? But like it's a partnership.
Yeah.
And I think it's fun. We'll talk here a little bit more. Do we put on our, like you say, put on your geek hat if you need to? Do you engage with the documents that you are eliciting from? Do you truly engage with your workshop participants? Are you trying to get them all participating? That engagement's not just everyone's participating, but example like we use with document analysis. As you read something, it has a reference. Did you go read the reference? Did you go talk to someone afterwards and validate? Did you go look up some other pieces? And so that engagement level, as you seek understanding, it's so powerful and so energetic. But to a point of, how do I understand where we're at and where we're going and why it's so beneficial? That's the art of elicitation.
Yeah. Wow. The more you talk about this, Jamie, the more I'm feeling it's like requirements gathering. That phrase was quite passive. Actually, requirements elicitation, as you're describing it there, feels really empowering for us as BAs. That because I know there will be some people listening where perhaps in their organisations they're perceived as scribes, and we probably all been there. Hopefully, not too many of us there anymore. But actually, everything you're saying, or at least to me, sounds like, well, it's really clear that elicitation is a key part of not just asking questions, but engaging with people, documents, and the situation to work out all of the interconnections between the mess that's there, so we can get to root causes and co-create something of value.
Absolutely. I'm going to keep that thought about value, because it'll show you how not only can you add value to your change effort here in a little bit, but you can add value back to the person you're working with. Cool. So I'm going to keep us going, because I love our conversations, and we have so much fun with our technology. I do want to call out the interviews, because we mentioned this so much, and we say this is what we think about. And so I'm a big fan of this thought of an interview scribe. That we do interviews all the time. Could you bring a scribe with you? And when I talk about a scribe in this sense, what I'm talking about is someone who does nothing but simply scribe. Now, okay, for everyone listening, no, I'm not saying BAs now come back to the scribe that we were just arguing with. I'm talking about a way that if I have a scribe, I'm engaged with you. I'm going to pause here because this is a perfect example. You and I are talking, and we're looking at the camera, we're engaged, I've got to ask you these same questions. I got 15 questions. Hold on, Adrian. Let me look at my list.
Yeah.
Number one, where are you from, if I ask you?
So I'm from Portsmouth in the UK.
Okay, hold on a second. Portsmouth in the UK. Okay. Second question I have here. How long have you been a business analyst with Blackmetric? How long have you been a business analyst?
So with the current organization, 2012. So that's like what, 7 years now? But
wait. You said current organization. Is that Blackmetric?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, and that's what's on my notes here. So hold on. If I spend an hour doing this with you, I see you smiling at me already, but I'm not engaged with you. I am so much more concerning my notes that I care about you as a person.
This reminds me that this is a crazy direction to go in, really, but it reminds me of I was talking to someone in the medical profession who was talking about electronic patient records. And they were talking about how some clinicians, whilst they're absolutely in favour of the idea of electronic patient records, have issues with the idea of putting a computer screen between them and the patient. Mm-hmm. Because what they don't want to be doing is like, as you say, hang on, Jamie, let me just get to the right screen. Oh, sorry, the screen's frozen. Let me go back. So they were saying about how in their particular situation, there was almost a, well, we do it with paper to start with, and then type it up, because we don't want to break that rapport. We don't want to break that rapport. And as you say, having the ability to have a scribe is even more powerful. But on that thought, so something that probably people are thinking right now, because we've all got these things, smartphones, and they can record. So I've always been really reluctant to record interviews and workshops. But what would you say to that? Because we could just record the thing.
Of course, recording, like you say, let's use the power. One, now you've changed the context of your discussion. You know, if I just have a conversation with you, it's fine. You have to be really, really clear on what you plan to do with it. So how I said with my elicitation activities, I try to give you a copy of it. When I give copies back of, like, here's my notes, or here's my requirements listing, or whatever it is, there's no names on it. You know, Adrian said this about this person. No. There's challenges with communication. There's opportunity for improvement. You know, you got to show them what you take with the observation. What's really funny, and again, a whole nother technique, is if you ever record and you play it back, what's really funny is you watch yourself. 90% of people watch themselves and, ooh, what was I doing? I do this all the time for my classes. I record them and I play it back. Because then when I watch them, I ask them to elicit out what they noticed in the scenario. And so many of them start watching themselves. They're not getting the interactions. They're not seeing what's going around. And as business analysts, you know, that's definitely one thing you got to watch for. As much as you can record and capture everything else, do you start noticing, oh, I messed up there. Oh, I asked the wrong question there. Oh, I shouldn't have asked that. They got nervous, you know, versus going, well, why did they get nervous? You know, is there understanding piece there? So the observation is a tool. Recording, you know, using the technology, it's in your toolbox. Absolutely use it. Pictures speak 1,000 words. You can now stop it and play it back. I love the fact that you record these sessions. I actually go back and listen to some of them, because what was that good idea we talked about? What was that great thing Adrian said? I can go back to it. So to me, let's think back to basics regardless the technology you're using. What is its purpose? I need a way to capture what is being said. Record. Then you can go back. There's tools that dictate it for you. Now you don't even have to type it, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah. And that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of the dictation. That's a real time saver.
Yeah.
But what one and one element that I was thinking that I really like that you said at the beginning there was around but it changes the context of the session, and I think that's worth highlighting, because we've probably all been in situations where an interview or workshop isn't recorded and someone says something like, well, don't write this down, but just so you know, that person hates that person, type of thing. If the thing happened 20 years ago and no one talks about it, but like, you need to know that. So sometimes I guess there's a risk of what we gain something by taking audio or video recording, but we might lose the ability for people to speak frankly about stuff, potentially.
Yeah. And good point. Like you say, let's be good business analysts. So think about it. If you're observing how people work in an office space, perhaps that's great for recording, because you need to see that context. You have to have that awareness of relationships and interactions. If it's you and I having a conversation, I really want to see where you're coming from and what information you can share with me. Then it's kind of questioning, well, is that recording actually adding value? You know, I just need to the point of capturing what you say so that you feel I really care about what, you know, I'm asking you and what you're saying back to me. So just being good, you know, like, there's planning, even for my agile VAs out there, there's planning work that goes into what we do. But I tease my friends, I said, take 30 seconds even before you walk into that room, before you call that person. What's my goal? What tools do I have that could best accomplish that goal? And what's my approach? You know, if we take a few seconds to go there, you know, that can be really helpful, you know, and that just will save you the time from using, I don't like to hear the word bad techniques. There are no bad techniques. Which is the best technique, which is the correct technique? That's easy. Whichever one works.
Yeah.
Which one works? Well, you got to try it. But that's why you try to use some planning, take some lessons learned, figure out what they responded to well on stuff. So I'm going to jump over because here's a good thought. If you are going to use a scribe, like you say, rather than record, one of my favorite things to do is get someone who has no clue what is going on. And people always laugh at me. They're like, really? Like, you just grab some random person? I'm like, the more random, the better, as long as they have good note-taking skills, because they will capture everything without bias. When even you and I are talking, I'm trying to make notes, just in a regular interview, I come with my own bias of why I'm here and what I'm doing. If you get someone who has no clue what's going on, they're more concerned with Jamie said to capture everything. So I'm going to try to write down everything that's said. They're trying to capture all those specific words used. Now, again, you might say, well, recording could do that as well, but this is a nice piece, to highlight. If you have someone who can help you write, they're capturing it live for you.
That's really interesting, Jamie, because one thing that I've heard more and more about in the BA community, and it just generally is cognitive biases. And I've heard a couple of great speakers about that recently. Liz Calder in the UK speaks on it. She's fantastic, and others. But you start to think about confirmation bias, right? And you think, oh no, we're BAs, we're objective, we couldn't possibly be biased, is always one of Liz's examples. But we're just as biased as everyone else. We're all human, we're all fallible, right? And you think about confirmation bias. Well, we've probably all done that, where by the fifth interview, but if you're interviewing 5 people, you think, oh, you don't say this. You think, I already know what's happening, so I'm only here really to confirm what I already know from the previous 4 interviews. So there's that danger that they say something that you weren't listening for, so it gets lost. So I love the idea. I love the idea of having someone available to almost challenge that, to say, you didn't pick up on that, and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a great idea.
Absolutely, because that's the part where, again, back to elicitation, I say understanding. We listen to respond so often, and they talk about active listening. Are you listening to understand? A lot of what we do when we're sitting in an interview, we're trying to wait for the right answer. I always tease people, if you know the answer, why are you asking someone? It kind of defeats the purpose. To your point, we're just validating it. If I want to know, I should worry about my question, ask you the good question, and then just focus on what you're saying. I might have to, tailor my script a little bit based on what you say, but then that shows I've heard you, I'm engaged, versus am I listening? How often someone goes, oh, I had this wonderful vacation, I went to Italy, and all you're thinking about is, oh yeah, when I went to Italy, I did this, and you're like, you can't wait to jump in and share your piece, even if you're being real polite and waiting, but you're just thinking about how I went to Italy, and I want to tell you, versus going, really? What did you try there in Italy? Like, what foods did you see? Or sample, and what really struck out to you? What landmarks? Did you go anywhere interesting? To really say, I'm interested in what you're talking about, versus rethinking and listening, understanding to respond. 2 totally different perspectives. Now, I will tell you, if you bring in someone who has no clue what's going on and they're helping you scribe, you unpack with them at the end. You can sit there and add in things like, did you see Jamie's hand motion? She got all excited. But what I do to help tell people to justify, because they're like, I can't hire a third person. It's bad enough I'm taking time. Why do I take someone else's time? Have you considered how valuable you've just given training? If I bring you, Adrian, with me to go, we're going to go see how the doctors do their medical records. That's a great example. I got to do that myself. Let's go see that. I tell you, write all the notes. You've just been exposed for, say, an hour of time to how these people operate in the clinic. You've watched them try to move the computer on wheels around all the medical equipment and everything else, that you've got that learning that I couldn't give you otherwise.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was just thinking as you were saying there, another thing about elicitation techniques, because we could look in BA Book or any of the other business analysis books, and there are that's the great thing about our community. There are so many good business analysis books out there that we could rely on. But we could get a long list of elicitation techniques. And it's really tempting to think, oh, they're all separate. So I can do an interview or a workshop or observation. And it's like, well, you know what? We've probably all done sessions where we've intended to do an interview. It's turned into observation, right? Because you turn up and you're at their desk and you see, oh, that's really interesting. There's an urgent phone call. Why is that? And what are you doing? Oh, that's interesting. I can see you're accessing these paper files. So you kind of get this, although for very good reason they're stated separately in the sort of textbooks, we can blend them together. It's all about context. The more I think about this, the more we're talking, it's all about the context, I think, Jamie, isn't it?
It's amazing, yeah. And think about that. If I say training, now not only have you learned the business, think about a junior business analyst, someone new to the field of business analysis, so not even to your company. They have just got to see you in action. At the end, when you go through, have them read the notes, or you're going through the notes together, however works for you guys, have them ask you questions. Well, why did you ask that question? I didn't understand that. You said your goal was to accomplish X. Why did you ask Y? They always tease from the mouth of babes, right? We learn so much, the why questions. If you bring someone junior, like a junior business analyst, even a project manager, I love them because then they see you. What are you doing differently than what I'm doing for this project, for this change effort? You've given them training on your own techniques and approaches. And not saying that you were perfect.
Yeah.
They pull out things that have now trained you.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Or, oh, I've gotten captured. Because one of the things I'd like to add here for when we talk about this interview scribe, not only the training on this part, here's what we say is more fun. Get them to interview you at the end of your session. Have them come up with questions ready to ask, again, why did you ask that question? Or did you prepare some things for this information? You seemed a little sidetracked when they talked about that topic. Have them interview you at the end. If you're bringing this person, let's make it valuable for their time. Now, on top of everything else, they got to practice their own elicitation skills with you.
Yeah.
You get to be in the seat, and we can add that back. What do? We get the notes and we go back to work, right? Let's have some fun with it. Let's have them say, okay, Jamie, now you're on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Here we go.
This is great. I love this idea, Jamie, because classroom training is important, of course, right? Or e-learning, or however people learn, and exercises in a classroom environment are great because it's a safe environment. But then sometimes if someone's new, to put them straight into an interview with a senior stakeholder, that's quite a big ask. So this is like a middle ground where we say, well, actually, you're not gonna go out on your own just yet. So work with someone who's a bit more experienced, but then you get to interview them at the end. I can see that really working. That's a great idea. I'd never really thought of it that way, but it's a really great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Pull the value out. And then what it does is it reinforces you. Whenever you're teaching, that you have to know your content, and you learn as much from the students as the students are learning from you. So that same spot now, if you have to be the interviewee, is that one more chance to reinforce how you approach interviews for successful pieces. Because if they're asking you questions like, wait, that's not my intent. No, that's not what I was talking about. You're going off on the wrong piece. If that's how you feel, did you ever think about your stakeholders, those people you do interviews with? Have you made them feel that way? So again, I can keep reading books and online stuff, and I can practice on my own. But that's a great way to do some sort of assessment. How do I really, truly improve my skills and go that right direction?
That's a really interesting, a number of interesting angles there. But one thing that was jumping out as you were speaking there was, there's something about making whatever elicitation, but say an interview, making it feel positive for the person, right? Because they might be talking about really difficult subjects. And I don't know if you've ever had this, but I find sometimes people disclose all sorts of stuff that's gone wrong, and at the end they almost say thank you. It's particularly if they're people on the front line, they're like, this is the first time. They don't say this, but it's almost like they're saying, this is the first time anyone's ever taken the time to come and listen to us. So in some ways, I think empathy is so important that actually, yeah, of course, we're there to receive and to understand. But I guess we have to empathize as well, that, you know, we might be interviewing folks who are in a difficult situation or who are struggling through. So that empathy feels really important too.
Absolutely. And like, this is why we even have verification and validation pieces, because letting the stakeholder know that you are there to understand their perspective within their context, you know, that there's no bias, there's no judgment, that I'm the VA. It's actually on my job to interview enough people to get the big picture together, so that it's okay, Adrian, that you share your experience. You know, I love my Apple products, but I've had a really fun experience at the Apple store with someone who has the word genius plastered over his shirt, not feeling like he was even remotely representing that, you know. But people tell me how awesome the store is because they can go and play and touch. That, again, you are understanding that person from their context at that point in time with what they had to operate, with what was going on in the environment. And so you are truly appreciative to have that view, you know, but that makes it also one of the hardest jobs is you now need to get enough views that you can describe a thorough picture, you know, understanding, am I looking at 5% or the 95%? You know, and yes, that sometimes you're going to just validate the person that these views matter. And it's explaining to me, I think that's why goals are so important, that I start off, you know, if it's an interview, Adrian, thank you for the time today. My goal here is to understand this process.
Mm-hmm.
All that you can share with me is appreciated, with the understanding that I'm very focused on this process because this is what I'm helping to change here. So, you know, again, giving your own context back, the more context you can say, and, you know, sometimes that is, I'm new to the organization. I appreciate you explaining some of the things as you walk through for me. That helps me a lot. Again, with my goal is to help the organization. You know, so sharing your same context back, that they can feel, like you say, almost a little validation to themselves that if anything, they've helped you today. My job sucks and it's awful because, oh, wait, but Jamie's here to actually help it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I am going to give you everything that I think about this process. You're going to automate it. I love it. You know, that you get to have that comfort level to helping each other. Again, back to engaging.
Yeah, and absolutely engaging. And one thing I find is sometimes by actually having the courage to say, look, you know, I don't know anything. All I know about this process is what I've read on the intranet, and that's years out of date. So I really need, you know, I really need your expertise here. And almost, you know, I'm going to ask, and I do say this sometimes, I'm going to ask questions that are going to seem really basic, but just stick with me because there's a reason. And one of the reasons I find I say that is often the questions that sound most basic end up being really important. Like, you know, tell me what the purpose of this is. And all of a sudden there are different views on that type of thing. So it's setting that scene is so important, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'd say, so like we're talking about interviewings. And so elicitation, though, I want to say is like a four-way approach we always talk about. We do the tell me what you do, you know, absolutely. We've talked some about show me what you do. You know, so again, we're just doing an interview, but then you get to see them live, go to where they're at. The two things I like to add in that we think about with elicitation is let me do what you do. If you get the opportunity to do anything, like you say, you get to experience, you really get to come where they're coming from. And then my favorite is actually let me learn what you do. Provided we're not doing brain surgery or anything that requires a high-level skill set certification. But what I love about this is if you learn what I would call the expected way, the trained way, the prescribed way of doing something, when you go talk to someone, when you go observe, you start noticing all the workarounds, all the exceptions, all the ways, because the only bias you have is what you were told it's supposed to work. So
Yeah,
I think that's a fun one we often skip when we talk about elicitation.
Yeah, because that was one thing that was coming to my mind was about tacit knowledge. So you think about the kind of knowledge that is so ingrained in people's heads that they've forgotten they know it. It's the kind of one thing I'm always doing, for example, is going back and checking I've locked my car door because I can't remember doing it. And it's, have I done it? And I've always done it, but people forget that they've done these things. So, I mean, observation can help us get around tacit knowledge. But do you have any other tips of like tapping into that tacit knowledge?
The part, like you say, is have them teach you. Like you say, if you get to do it, all right, this client application, we keep hearing that it's such a hard thing. Okay, I'm gonna try to walk through it, and you guide me like you would be guiding a client. I'm gonna fill it out. You help guide me. Now I get to experience it. That part of the training piece. Okay, here's what I've been told. When you go there and you watch and observe, but if you have that training in your mind, then the questions be like, well, what's that piece of paper that's there? Oh, that's my cheat sheet. I know I only have to fill in those 4 fields. The rest are optional. And I'm thinking, my mind training, no. They said fill in every field and then you hit submit. And they're like, no, I just remember that and I go with it and stuff. So it's that piece on what I'd say is balance your activities to capture that tacit knowledge if it's valuable. Now, again, like you say, I don't need to worry about you locking your car door or not. I just need to know how long it takes you to get from A to B because I need averages.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to improve the time it takes for you to get from A and B, then I want to watch everything you do because even though you say, well, you just drive to work, you park, you come into the office. Watching you run back to double check you locked your car, it's something you just failed to forget to tell me because you don't think about it. But that my goal was different. So again, I'm going to go back to now we're creating our foundations here of elicitation. A little planning, clear definition of your goal and what you hope to achieve. Mm-hmm. And so here's a fun one. I love, we're talking and everyone's like, yeah, Jamie, this is the easy stuff. What about the hard part? Because you got to work with people, right? Working with stakeholders. So you got to remember you have to work with your stakeholders. And so the stuff that I don't have time to sit with you, like I love this comment, I don't have time to talk with you. Mm-hmm. All right, fine. I'm going to come sit with you. That's the easiest way to turn it around. Whatever response you get, turn it right around. Okay, great. Can I come sit with you? This one, I'm already too busy. I don't have time for this. That's the easy one, right? I don't have any time to talk with you. Get your requirements somewhere else. Okay, well, can I help you with what you're busy with? Have you offered to help them with their job? Because again, can I do what you do? If they say, well, I'm so busy doing this because I got to get this report out, well, can I see that report? If I'm trying to understand your context, your job, can I help you? Do you just need some data copied from A to B I could help with? Again, don't offer to help with the brain surgery. Let's stay away from those topics. But, think about, can I jump in? Because now that's more learning. There's your tacit knowledge. So much else I have to do, jump right in. And, like I say, my biggest thing on talking about working with your stakeholders, if you can go to them, even virtually, get on a call and go where they're at. One time someone said, Jamie, the questions you told me you're going to ask come up in our meeting. Can you just call into the meeting and listen to the meeting? So instead of having an interview with me, she invited me to her meeting. I actually got a ton of my content and questions answered. All I had to do was send an email afterwards.
Yeah.
But again, what's their context? What are they working with? And so that these are some ones, just turn them around. Have some fun. Like you say, can I do it? Can you show me it? Can I learn it? And to your point, can we help them out with the process? I want to show 2 things real quick, just since I know we're watching our time. I love how much we have conversations just because we brought them up and give some people some more ideas because we definitely get into elicitation here. Is I want you to think about you're using models. Mm-hmm. Process modeling. I love it. Every, hopefully, VA on the call, they love Visio, Lucid Chart, whatever tool you're using, you have fun with it. And so I have here good basic process model. I was trying to define how we might do an elicitation. Set up the interview, conduct it, you document it, you communicate, done. Very Babok-based, nice process model. When I lay this out, have I just validated your work? We talked about valuing the person you're interviewing, almost like you've done a therapy session. I always tease. I've process model live with my audience as much as possible. I do not take notes and go back and build a diagram and send it later.
And sorry to interrupt, Jamie, but that's a really interesting point that's just really resonated with me, because, you know, I mean, you know, you and I mean, I know I'm a fan of formal modeling techniques. So, you know, I love a good BPMN diagram as much as the next person. But there's a time and place for everything. And it's probably fair to say that if you're eliciting, actually, boxes and lines is fine. Like, even if you're gonna refine it into a BPM, you know, beautiful executable BPMN model in future, don't confuse them with BPMN in the interview. Just use boxes and lines. Is that the approach you would take, Jamie?
Oh, absolutely. Doing this live, like, see, now I lined them up afterwards. While you were talking, I was just throwing boxes. I don't even have arrows most of the time when I do it live.
Yeah.
Why? I'm sticking boxes on there. I'm just sticking boxes. Someone asked me how I like highlight like changes. We were talking about process modeling. Well, you keep talking. I'm just going to even color code the box, and we're going to keep going. We just know something in the conduct interview box here has to change. We got to improve that. We don't know what, but that's okay. We're going to just keep going. Again, back to the point, my point of this, say, using this model is I wanted to understand the steps you do to conduct an interview. My goal was not to improve your interview process. There's two entirely different goals there.
Mm-hmm.
So process modeling, shoot, use stars, use shapes, have some fun with it. People always laugh. I put people icons. You know, you use the use case actor icon, stick it right there. They smile and laugh. I never tell people the techniques I'm using. But what you've done is we now have a picture. When I ask Adrian, are we on the same page? That is a great elicitation question. Mm-hmm. This is a great example of how to prove it. Why? Because you can say, that box isn't in the right spot. And all I have to do is go, okay, that my cleanup work, what I do back at my desk is just to, like you say, align it, get it executable, define the details, you know, whatever else was missed. But my time with my clients, my customers, my stakeholders is so valuable. Mm-hmm. I want to get as much as I can. And, you know, like you say, stakeholders afterwards, I've done some of these, and there's like 72 boxes down the line and all these people. They go, wow, I really do all that?
Yeah. It's the first time they've seen it. They're like, really? Is it that complicated? Yeah.
So you've given so much validation, back to how we said about the stakeholders, you know, giving them some input, some viewpoint, some valuation to what they do. You know, like I've had people go, can I have a copy of that? I like to keep that, you know, and I'm like, of course, you know, my habit is I give everybody everything. But still, like, you know, like you say, they'll ask for it. Like, oh, that's me. Can I keep that? You know, it's like, sure. You know, in fact, keep the current state because I can't wait for you to see the future state one. That one you're really going to like.
Yeah.
So the elicitation, and I mean, think about this. This is such a powerful piece. When you put a picture out there, people start giving you feedback instantly. If I switch to, like, say, this model, and this was one for like an airline reservation system, you know, okay, granted, maybe we did this a little fast. I literally did this in, you know, 30 seconds talking to someone. My nomenclature might need to be cleaned up if we overanalyze some of these. But we have something we can start talking about that people say, well, current customers, potential customers, travel agent, you know, they talk about, what about the employees? You know, are they interacting with it? Are they a customer? I've given something to give feedback. And, you know, a topic for elicitation for a complete another day is you and me now are both focused on the same challenge at hand. Mm-hmm. When I switch over and I go back and say, all right, let's go back to our conversation. This is you and me. If you say something I don't like, it feels almost combative. Like you would say, well, no, Jamie, that's not the right question. You need to actually ask me about this. Now it's almost confrontational, you know, and that gets uncomfortable. And now I get scared to ask you more questions. We're not having a comfy scenario. If I pause and go back to my drawing and say, all right, Adrian, we need to really understand, you know, about how flights are booked. And let's talk about who really is working with this booking flights. Now you can tear up my picture. You can tell me all kinds of things. Jamie, well, that's wrong. No, the travel agent doesn't actually book the flight. They're going to use they don't use the airline reservation system. They use something totally different. You can start telling me all these other actors, all these, that is not the only functions that go on in that use case. You know, we got to totally blow this out of the water. You're no longer attacking me.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
attacking the challenge at hand. Then you and I can go back and sit here and go, all right, Adrian, you and I are on the same page. Let's look at that thing together.
Yeah, because it's almost like, I mean, you say the same page, it is almost like there's literally a page, and it's like, this is what it's the model we're criticizing, it's the model we're talking about. So it's no longer a personal criticism. So I love that analogy.
Yeah, absolutely, because that's what we are when we're doing the interviews. Like, people say, I get hostile stakeholders. You know, they don't want to talk to me. They're closed. Or they get mad at me for asking. I go, well, let's emphasize, it's not you saying, I'm here to do my job, answer my questions. Back to, I'm understanding for what purpose. What am I getting from what you're saying? How am I using it? Even just a few seconds explaining that to someone at the beginning might open up those doors. And like you say, I love literally using this for conflict all the time. Write the conflict on the wall. Then you and I can sit here and be really excited about that thing. The wall doesn't yell back at us. It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't get hurt, or feel like its job is in jeopardy. The wall's going to still be there. Well, don't tell the wall we might be breaking it down later, but, in general, it's not going to have those feelings that we might get when we're personal. And again, the feelings just mean that someone cares. I love that part when we have conversations that they're like, Jamie, they flat out told me I was wrong, in front of a whole group of people, and it was trying to be mindful that they told me my results were wrong. Mm-hmm. The product was wrong. What we were doing wasn't right for their situation. And so being mindful that they actually cared enough to give you feedback. Mm-hmm. That's first part, right? We talk cultural. How many times do we smile and nod? Yeah. That sounds good enough. Sure. Okay. Right.
And that's a really interesting angle, isn't it? Because sometimes you get almost tacit agreement where, because no one stands up, it's like, it's okay enough that everyone's like, yeah, but then if we've only got, but then we end up with like a meh solution, because nobody's been brave enough, that no one's felt enthusiastic enough to stand up and say, actually, that's not right. Actually, we shouldn't do it that way, or we can't do it that way. So yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Like you say, when I can go over to my picture here, and instead of me going, wow, Adrian, look at that, awesome, it's got purple colors, it's nice and lined up, I go, okay, Adrian, I'm missing some things in here, I feel, or I'm not sure I captured this the right way. I've opened up that box, that empathy, design thinking, if anyone's seen that, that tell me what's wrong with it so I can make it right. That mental mindset of that, it's a great way to get better understanding, get the feedback that, Adrian, I'm giving you permission to look at this and make it good.
Yeah.
I'm not tell me what's bad with it. I want you to help me make it better. This is what I started with. I think that's one thing our BAs need to watch so often is we get very ownership of our products and like, look, I made a BRD, and I'm so proud of it, versus going, it's what I did with what I knew, with what I had access to at that point, with my context, with my understanding, remembering that whole big picture, I produced this model. Mm-hmm. So that worked at that time, but I know it may not work tomorrow. I'm smart enough to understand other people may have more knowledge and help me make it better. Doesn't mean I'm bad or I'm inefficient or ineffective. I just know people can help me make it better.
And it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because bouncing off that idea, it's we're the conduit. Like we don't. We talk about our requirements document, but it's not really our requirements document. Like, they're not our requirements, or very rarely. It'll be a special case. But we are helping to elicit and facilitate the discovery process and the analysis process. That means that we can come to a set of requirements. Or it might be a set of, user stories with acceptance criteria and models and whatever that accurately will create something that will enable value. So actually, when, and I'm just thinking on my feet here, but if we frame it that way, then it doesn't really matter if someone criticizes the document, because the document's just what we've channeled at that, as you say, at that point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like to get you there. And that's where, when I say like, getting creative and having some fun, like some of these were pictures here, but that bottom left, my hand holding those toys,
Yeah.
someone used that. They were doing an agile or agile course. I love it. Ryland, he was trying to get people to understand Scrum Master, like builder, like who was your product owner, who was your Scrum Master. And we used toys. It was tangible objects, because then you could get mad at the truck that was sitting there. You had a toy there. We like our Post-its. Post-its you can rip off the wall. I have the red Solo cup there. I bring red Solo cups to my meetings. People always laugh because there's a connotation apparently with drinking and after hours activities with those. But I show up with them at work. Why? Because I've shifted your focus to an object. Now you can attack the object. Now we can use it, leverage it, build on it. The pictures. Watch. I have here recording someone recording, just to see how that looked. So when I say get creative with this stuff, don't think that it has to be done like I've got an interview, I produce a document, and I move forward. Write the document live. Show people. I always bring up the spreadsheet. They're like, "This is your requirement spreadsheet?" I go, "Well, yeah, that's what I have. Do you have something better?" They're like, "No, no, no. I'm just curious, but I'll bring it up. I'll say, hey, check it out." So again, doing it live helps me a lot. Watching our time, Adrian, I'm so scared, but I've got to ask, is everyone like asleep at the wheel? Or anything left in our few minutes left of questions?
So I know people definitely aren't asleep, because I can see the number of people who are live, and and people are definitely awake. So we probably have time for one question, I guess. Jamie, if there are questions left over, are you happy for people to tweet them to you or email them to you, or?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll share over here real quick my contact information, that I am absolutely on Twitter. Here's my email address. Just email me too. I get great ideas. Please don't be afraid to email me. LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn. That's great. Find me on LinkedIn, follow me, message me. Those are great, because often they turn into more topics like you say on here. And I love, to your point about BA community, that we have so many people out there that others often have the same challenges, and they have millions of ideas. I mean, we've crammed way too much in like a short amount of time, but like there's so much more we could do. It just, all we were talking was elicitation.
Yeah,
like 1,000 techniques out there we could use, ones that we didn't even know existed.
yeah.
So please send questions, and I'll happily share out both the question and the answer with our communities. Please.
Fantastic. So I think if you do have questions, do reach out to Jamie, because I think time has it has worked against us, as it always does in these situations. And I mean, I always enjoy our conversations, Jamie, and I've really enjoyed our conversation today. It's given me some new perspectives on elicitation. So thank you very much for that. I'm sure people will want to stay in touch. So, and again, if you are tuning in live, or whether you're tuning in on the recording, I definitely recommend that you connect with Jamie on LinkedIn and on Twitter, because she shares lots of really useful stuff. Any other ways of staying in touch, or anything you'd like to mention before we close, Jamie?
No, just again, please reach out to me. I'm excited. I'll get to do a lot of the hands-on activities at Building Business Capability this year, Fort Lauderdale in November. I'll be seeing you there then. We'll come across our oceans and meet in the middle.
Yeah.
So if anyone's going to Building Business Capability, I'll be doing a tutorial there. So please join in. We'll get to do a lot of this hands-on practice, actually. So
definitely. Awesome. So check out Jamie's website, check out the BBC conference. Again, excellent way of meeting other practitioners. So the only final thing to say, and if you can move on to the final slide, Jamie, that would be perfect, but is really just a massive thank you to, well, of course, to you, Jamie, for being part of this. I know it was like really early your time when we tuned in. It was like 7 o'clock a.m. and you were just grabbing coffee. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. I'm really confident that people will have gained a lot from that session. Thank you also to everyone who has tuned in live or who has watched the recording. As a reminder, the idea behind this webinar series really was to explore new ideas in business analysis, or to look at existing ideas in a slightly different way. So I've really enjoyed Jamie's take on elicitation here. There is another webinar coming up. The next one that we have scheduled is in June. I'm hoping there'll be one in May, but we're not quite ready to announce it yet. But in June, we've got a session on resilience and mindfulness. And if you are anything like most BAs, you've probably had difficult stakeholders. You've had to keep resilient. So that's one to check in your diaries. If you are attending live, when you close the webinar down, you'll automatically see a link to sign up to it. So thanks once again to Jamie for making time for the webinar. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Hope to catch up with you all soon. But bye for now.